Oh, shucks, we have a test. I forgot to study. What am I gonna do?
I heard a thunderous voice.
I heard someone needs help studying.
So, what is your test on?
The second industrial revolution.
We got you! I'll teach you the significance of the advancements of the Industrial Revolution, as well as how these advancements and transportation influence migration.
And I'm going to teach you about socialism, labor movements, and how Asian states reacted to the European revolutions.
I'm Josh Cooper,
I'm John Gibbons.
And I'm MJ Judah.
and this is
Jaden B. Enemy.
I'm Josh Cooper, and let's dive into the second Industrial Revolution. Let's talk about the significance of advancements in new industries and their impact on production and transportation. The Second Industrial Revolution saw major advancements in steel, chemicals, and electricity, which forever changed manufacturing and travel. The Bessemer process revolutionized steel production, making it cheaper, stronger, and more durable. This led to the construction of skyscrapers, steel bridges, and extensive railway networks, drastically improving infrastructure and urban development. The availability of affordable steel also fueled the mass production of standardized parts, accelerating the rise of the assembly line and the development of automobiles, which enhanced transportation efficiency. Advancements in chemical manufacturing introduced synthetic dyes, plastics, pharmaceuticals, fertilizers, and explosives, expanding industrial applications and giving rise to new sectors such as the weapons industry. Meanwhile, electricity became a key driver of industrialization, powering factories, urbanizing cities, and enabling inventions like electric streetcars, lighting systems, and communications devices, such as the telegraph and telephone, paving the way for modern communication infrastructure. Let's talk about the impact of transportation and communication advancements on migration. The expansion of railroads, steamships, and communication technology significantly influenced internal and external migrations in the 19th century, a period known as the Transportation Revolution. Railroads and steamships made long-distance travel faster, cheaper, and more accessible, driving westward expansion in the United States and allowing settlers to reach new farming lands and resource-rich areas. Whew, that was a lot of information. Let's take it back a notch. We're just on the concept of the steamship, which was created by the invention of the steam engine. It would not have been possible without them. Let's dive into the steam engine real quick with a primary resource. The first thing you'll notice about this primary source is the title, The Philosophy of Manufactures, or an exposition of the scientific, moral, and commercial economy of the factory system of Great Britain. Alright, that's a lot. Let's simplify that. Basically, Andrew Orr is implying that the construction of steamships facilitated both internal migration as people moved to areas with new industrial opportunities, like shipbuilding and canal building, sailing, and external migration as easier travel allowed movement between countries. The steam engine also freed up land for food production, allowing more people to settle in agricultural areas. Additionally, the mass production of cheap goods and the growth of trade stimulated economic opportunities, prompting further migration to areas urbanizing and industrializing. The improved infrastructure also facilitated urban migration as people moved from rural areas to cities in search of factory jobs and economic opportunities. Externally, steamships made transatlantic travel easier, leading to large waves of European immigration to the Americas. These advances also allowed European powers to exploit colonies more efficiently, facilitating the movement of resources and labor. Meanwhile, the telegraph played a crucial role in migration patterns by spreading information about job opportunities, economic conditions, and political climates, influencing people's decisions to relocate. One of the most notable examples of transportation-driven migration was the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which connected the east and west coasts of the U.S. in just 6 years. This massive project relied heavily on Chinese immigrant labor, reshaping demographics and leading to increased cultural diversity in the U.S. Ultimately, these transportation and communication advancements accelerated economic growth, industrialization, and global interconnectedness, reshaping societies worldwide.
Hi, my name is MJ Judah, and I'm going over the spread of industrialization mainly in the U.S., Russia, and Latin America. The U.S. and Russia pursued industrialization with distinct approaches and outcomes. The U.S. saw a gradual, market-driven industrial revolution, while Russia was a top-down, state-led effort, resulting in a rapid but uneven growth and ultimately a different type of industrial society. The U.S. industrialization was driven by a combination of factors, including technological innovation, abundant natural resources, a growing population, and a relatively free market. The government played a role in infrastructure development and promoting economic growth, but the primary engine was private enterprise. The U.S. saw rapid growth in industries like railroads, steel production, oil refining, and manufacturing. The U.S. industrialization was largely successful, leading to a powerful economy and a high standard of living. The U.S. became a global economic and military power. The rapid industrialization also led to social problems, including inequality, urbanization, and environmental issues. On the other hand, Russia's industrialization was essentially planned, state-led effort, focusing on heavy industry and rapid growth. The government controlled resources and production, aiming to catch up with the industrialized nations of the West. The focus was on heavy industry, such as steel, coal, and machinery production, with less emphasis on consumer goods. The Soviet Union achieved rapid industrial growth, particularly in heavy industry, and became a major economic and military power. However, this growth was achieved at a high cost, including widespread shortages of consumer goods and a lack of economic flexibility. Now, let's head over to Latin America. In the 19th century, Latin American industrialization was largely characterized by an export-led primary production model, with limited success in developing a diversified domestic manufacturing base and remained heavily reliant on foreign capital markets. Following independence from Spain and Portugal, Latin American nations faced political instability, economic challenges, and internal conflicts, hindering long-term planning and investment. Latin American economies largely focus on producing and exporting raw materials like coffee, sugar, wheat, beef, and minerals. Manufacturing remained underdeveloped, with some countries like Mexico and Brazil seeing some early textile production, but overall, the region lagged behind in industrial development. The 19th century industrialization efforts in Latin America can be considered largely unsuccessful in creating a diversified, self-sufficient industrial base. The region remained heavily reliant on primary exports, making its economies vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices.
Yo, I'm Jaden, and welcome to the next part of the Industrial Age Reaction segment. Today we'll focus on labor movements during the 19th century. Now, you can probably see why I'm a skeleton because I'm dead from doing all this research on this project, but that being said, let's get into it. As industrialization rapidly transformed economies, workers faced long hours, low wages, and unsafe conditions. In response to this, many factory workers organized labor unions to push for change. Think of the unions as the original Avengers assembling to save the working class. Early unions like the Federal Society of Journeyman Cordwainers, Knights of Labor, and the American Federation of Labor were all pioneers, fighting for workers' rights and better conditions. They were like the Batman of the labor world, always vigilant, always fighting for justice. These unions used tactics like strikes, boycotts, and negotiations to achieve their goals. For example, the Haymarket Riot of 1886 and the Homestead Strike of 1892 were dramatic season finales, highlighting the workers' frustrations and demands for fair wages, reasonable hours, and safer conditions. Now, the next thing I have before moving on to the next part of this is a couple of primary sources for you. The first primary source document that I have that I'm going to explain for a little bit is this picture right here. In this first primary source document I provided, this little cartoon here describes how workers wanted 8 hours of rest, work, or just free time in general. If you recall earlier in the video, I talked about how labor unions push for changes just like these. With that in mind though, this gives absolute motivation for a labor union member to create a political cartoon such as this, due to the message that they send for the higher-ups and the bigger corporations that they ask to see major changes from. The second primary source that I have for you all is this picture right here. The second primary source here talks about working and living conditions as well. I say it's about living and working conditions because this document is primarily about warning the working populace about cholera. At the time, cholera was the bacterial infection that would cause you severe diarrhea. That could easily result in death, and healthcare was not a top priority for the factory members. It was advised to boil your water for daily use, then dispose of its remnants after you're finished with it. That way, your chances of getting cholera significantly decrease. I say that this involved working conditions as well, and the reason for that is because all the people and all of the factories responsible for polluting the rivers so bad to the point where a warning had to be issued about it. Now that I've finished explaining both of my primary sources, let's get back to the main topic of this part of the video. The labor movements I mentioned today led to significant social and economic reforms, including the establishment of labor laws and the recognition of workers' rights. Thanks to the efforts of these labor unions, our workplaces are no longer seen as a Victorian horror novel. Unions played a crucial role in improving working conditions and advocating for the rights we have today. So next time you enjoy a break at work, just remember, it wasn't magic like Harry Potter waving his wand, it was the hard work of labor unions that made it happen. Alright, well, that's it for me. Let's see what the other guys have. Although, I am the best of the best, but I'll give them the spotlight. Let's see how they do with it.
So, the Industrial Revolution caused a lot of good things, like the super quick growth that created the lifestyle we all know and love, basically jump-starting our idea of capitalism. As we all know, capitalism was in support of the idea that people should be free to own property, make money, and compete in the marketplace. It's based on the concept of private property, self-interest, and competition. One downside, however, is that while the CEOs of these companies lived lavish lifestyles, the less fortunate were forced to work jobs that were pretty grueling and dangerous. With socialism, however, which formed as a sort of response to the negative social and economic effects of the Industrial Revolution, was mainly characterized by social ownership of all things, as opposed to private ownership. This came about as a response to things like the huge wealth disparities created by capitalism during the revolution, leading thinkers to propose different systems like socialism, which was an attempt to create a more equitable distribution of wealth by using collective ownership rather than private ownership under capitalism. One big complaint made by socialists was about the exploitation of workers. The harsh conditions in factories, including child labor, long hours, and low pay, led to widespread dissatisfaction among the working class, creating fertile ground for socialist ideas. Another big point was the inequality of wealth between classes, because the widening gap that we often saw at this point in history was a big point of concern over the equality of the country, and this prompted socialists to advocate for a system that could more equally distribute wealth. So now we're going to head on over to the Asian states like the Ottoman Empire and Qing China, which primarily reacted to European industrialization by attempting to implement limited reforms and modernization efforts as a way to sort of catch up to the already industrializing states. They'd often do this through military upgrades and administrative changes. They did face significant challenges, however, because of internal resistance from conservative elites, and ultimately struggled to keep up pace with the rapid technological advancements of the West, leading to increased vulnerability to European influence and economic exploitation. The Ottomans, through the Tanzimat reforms, tried to modernize their legal and economic systems, while the Qing dynasty largely resisted Western technology adoption until later attempts at self-strengthening movement, with mixed success, to be honest. And for my primary resource, I'm going to choose Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto, made in 1848. This book helped spread socialist beliefs by critiquing capitalism and advocating for workers' rights. As industrialization led to harsh working conditions, economic equality, and exploitation, Marx's ideas gained traction among the working class, intellectuals, and labor movements. His theories influenced socialist and communist parties, labor unions, and revolutionary movements across Europe and beyond, contributing to demands for labor reforms, social welfare, and in some cases, radical political change. So, to wrap this up in a neat little bow, the Industrial Revolution sparked rapid growth in capitalism, boosting wealth but also creating harsh worker conditions and inequality. Socialism emerged to counter this with collective ownership. Meanwhile, Asian states like the Ottoman Empire and Qing China struggled to modernize, facing resistance and European dominance despite reform attempts.
In this video, we cover the Second Industrial Revolution's advancements in steel, chemicals, and electricity, which transformed production and transportation.
Railroads, steamships, and telegraphs reshaped migration and communication.
The U.S. rapidly industrialized, while Russia's state-led efforts were less effective.
Latin America lagged due to economic dependence.
Socialism emerged in response to capitalism's inequality, sparking labor movements demanding better conditions.
Meanwhile, the Ottomans and Qing dynasty struggled to industrialize with mixed reform efforts.
On behalf of the group,
Thanks for watching!